What is up, everybody, and welcome to our first broadcast here for Just a Bit Inside podcast. I'm your host, Chris Kendrick, of course, and here on this episode, we're going to hit on a 2022-23 NBA preview. I told you guys it was coming up, and if we're talking NBA, I'm getting none other than my lead NBA insider, Steve Celadon. I think that's the title we're going to land on. We've dabbled with a few different things for you, Steve, but I think lead NBA insider, because you're the man that's just got all the knowledge. You're inside. I couldn't think of a better combination.
It's perfect. It's fitting. That's the one. I'll wear the crown. Excited for the season. We're excited to get going here.
Yeah, so Steve here, we got our first broadcast, again, going to be live on, or we'll post it up here on YouTube. So, again, there'll be some video elements we'll probably talk about a little bit, but, bear with us here again. First broadcast. So, Steve, again, 1 week into the NBA season so far, what are some highlights or some things that have stuck out to you so far this season?
It's just the best part of the first week is the overreactions, just people jumping the gun, calling to disband the Lakers, calling to give Damian Lillard the MVP trophy now. That's what's best about this. The Spurs and the Jazz are tied for like first and second in the West. The best part about the start of the season is just overreacting to the initial impact that these teams could have. And then also solidifying some thoughts for like the Celtics looking dominant, the Bucks looking dominant, everyone looking healthy at the start of the season. That's what I look forward to the most.
Yeah, one thing you hit on there, the Celtics, of course. I think it was good for them to get off on a good foot, especially with all the stuff with Ime going on in the offseason. I think if they had come out slow, it would have, put, I think, a bigger light on Joe Mazzulla. I think them coming out of the gates on a good foot here, winning their first 3 games, losing to the Bulls the other night, their first loss. But, that's given probably some comfort, as he starts his career here now as an NBA coach that's just been sort of thrown into the fire.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the worst scenario to be put in right before the start of the season, losing. Other than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I think that Udoka was the most important person on this team. So it was just a tough curveball. Plus, you're adding a new starting point guard, a few new pieces on the team. But the Udoka news, I think, hurt, especially because you lost your lead assistant to the Jazz, which was super odd to begin with. Celtics never pursued anything on that. But the Celtics they're a player-driven team. Even with someone stepping in as interim head coach, everything's going to rely on the star players, the star wings. They've been to a championship before. So hopefully with the people like Brogdon, Marcus Smart, the leaders of the team, hopefully they're able to maintain a positive record. And I think they will. I think they're the best team in the Atlantic Division right now to start. But not having Udoka really is going to hurt them.
Yeah, so we're going to jump right into here. Some of the, hit on some teams here, go through some divisions. So might as well just start in the East, our division here, the Atlantic. Celtics a little bit. We talked about Joe Mazzulla, the rookie head coach. I think they've got the depth that you talked about, adding Brogdon. You got Derek White comes off the bench. Grant Williams comes off the bench. Though Time Lord's out now. So I think that's going to be something they got to get over here for the first couple months. Again, good start for them so far with that 3-1 start, but we'll kind of see how that depth at the big man position. You got Al Horford, and then you got who was it? The guy they added. I'm escaping him. Noah Vonleh. I feel like those are the two-man rotation they got right now until Time Lord comes back.
Yeah, I think that they're gonna. It's a weak big man crew that they have right now. I think that before the season even started, losing Danilo Gallinari as a stretch 4 hurt. I thought that was going to be a big part of their plan moving in this season. Time Lord, I think his injury is a little more serious than they're letting on to believe, especially being an athletic big like that, who, he's not a stretch, he's not a shooter. He relies on banging against bodies low. I think they need to really ease him back to the mix. But again, in the Atlantic Division, especially with the Sixers starting so poorly, I think the Celtics are going to be able to will themselves to a lot of victories to start this season, just based off the two. They probably have the best wing combo in the league right now.
Yeah, we'll get to the discussion on some, player awards, but I've talked about on other podcasts, I'm a big Tatum guy this year. I think he's going to have a huge, huge year. Now looking also at the top of the Atlantic, you got your New York Knicks. What are your thoughts so far there with the Jason and Jalen Brunson in the mix?
I love it. The Knicks just being in New York are always the controversial team. I think that when we signed Jalen Brunson, nobody was expecting him to be the savior. We didn't draft Patrick Ewing again, but we haven't had a starting legit point guard, in my opinion, since Steph Marbury. And Jalen Brunson is tough. He's proven he won at Villanova. He was a great sidekick for Luka Doncic, probably a little overshadowed. And the way that he controls the floor, he puts Julius, he puts RJ in positions where they need to be. Last year, they didn't have that. Last year, RJ was bringing the ball up. They started Alec Burks at point guard for most of the season, who just wasn't a point guard. They haven't had this type of leadership, I think, in a long, long time. And through 4 or 5 games, Julius Randle looks like all NBA Julius Randle. I think he's playing with less pressure on himself. The only difficult spot so far, in my opinion, was RJ seems a little lost in the mix. He got the contract in the offseason. At the end of last season, he was definitely the go-to guy. He's still not an exceptional shooter, which he really needs to work on because with Jalen Brunson getting into the paint as frequently as he does, RJ will be open a lot of the times. So he definitely needs to step up in the 3-point shot. But like we're healthy, we've got some young talent. I think Quentin Grimes will be a serious player when he comes back. I think he's actually going to win Evan Fournier's job away from him. Mitchell Robinson, the blockness monster,
Mm-hmm.
he had 6 last game. Like he is our time lord. He's our
Yeah.
version of Robert Williams. He's athletic. He's massive. His wingspan is huge. So no one's expecting a championship from my Knicks, but I would love us to be that team that you don't want to play in the playoffs, assuming that we get there.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you do have a guy like Quentin Grimes push Fournier to the bench, that's just some great bench depth for the Knicks to have. The guy that can come off and just bury a few threes, either get a run going or try to stop a run. I think he's, a key guy. He was great for the Celtics when he was here, and I think he's, could be a key guy for the Knicks for sure this year.
For sure. He played well for France in the offseason. Maybe he's just a little tired going into this season, especially with the way Grimes played in Summer League. I think a lot of people were expecting him to either start or compete for starter minutes, and then Grimes getting hurt. It forces Fournier to start to be competitive. He's looked lackadaisical on defense. Grimes is a better wing defender. And Fournier, if you're not hitting open threes, then what are you really doing for the team? That's the concerning part so far.
So, what are your expectations for the Knicks this year?
6, 7 seed. I
Okay.
think that we are not in the Bucks Celtics range. I think we're in more the Atlanta Hawks, even the Miami Heat now. I think they're going to take a step back. I think we're in that segment. So teams that you don't want to play in the playoffs, but
Hmm.
not a top 3 seed, but competitive this year. The East looks different. It looks a little more wide open than normal.
Yeah, so another thing you hit on there were the struggling Sixers, but also struggling the Nets. Both teams, Nets 1-3, Philly 1-4. First let's hit on Brooklyn. How many games do you think their big three are going to play together this year, and what do you think of that team as a whole?
Uh, when I watch them for my notes here, I just put AAU basketball. It looks like AAU teams. There's really no structure. You take the talent that you can find in your area, you plop them on a team, and you go win games. But that could only last for so long. That type of win by talent strategy. I'm not going to criticize Ben Simmons at all. I think that's too unfair for a
Hmm.
player that hasn't played in 2 years to just thrust him into the starting lineup on a team with so much attention and just expect him to be great again. Um, I feel like the Nets might be using him wrong. I think that he's always been more of a, as crazy as it sounds, more of a Draymond Green type of player than like a starting star point guard.
Hmm.
6'10", could handle the ball, could distribute the ball, could guard all 5 positions. If you just expect him to do that, then he would be very good. If you expect him to be an all-star starting point guard, he's never going to be that again. He still looks a little nervous to shoot, but again, I think that's going to come in time. Back when he averaged around 17 and 8 a game, but everyone saw in the offseason, they're not sure if Kyrie wants to be there. We're not sure if the Nets want Kyrie to be there. Kevin Durant runs the team, so it's going to go. They're going to go as far as he wants to take them, which is a lot of responsibility for him as he gets older.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually talking to Ben Simmons a little bit with someone today, and just like the thought of him being that number one overall pick, but he never was supposed to be a shooter, and now he's getting so much flack for not shooting the ball or not being a good shooter. It's like, why does he have these expectations to be a shooter? When he came out of college, he was a playmaking distributor. He led, I think, the NCAA in assists that year at LSU, and
Yep.
he had no expectations to be a shooter. But now he's got all this pressure to shoot when he's never going to live up to that expectation as a shooter. It's just going to put more of that pressure on him and not want to shoot. When in essence, he should just be going to the rack every time as a 6'11" point guard. But then there's
Right.
that fear of him being at the line. But I feel like, at least you can be good at the line. That's one consistent shot you can try to make. It's going to at least get him off your back for a little bit.
As long as he's aggressive, though, like that's the thing. In his prime season, he was 17, 8, and 8. If you offered me that up as blind stats, hey Steve, do you want this to be your starting point guard for the next 5 years? I'm taking it every time. The thing with Ben Simmons, I get that he can't shoot. I get that he's nervous from the line. But as long as he's getting those fouls called, you're still doing your team a service. Even if you go 1 for 7, 1 for 8, whatever, he's drawing fouls just because of his size and his skill set. If they're putting him in positions to be successful, he could guard the other team's best player. He could rebound. He could pass effectively. I think that they're just using him the wrong way. I think there was too much pressure on him in Philly, and that's ultimately what broke him. But if Steve Nash could figure out a way to utilize his talents, he's really more of a power forward than
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah, just based on his like frame and like that skill set, it's just they definitely
Right.
could utilize them and just alleviate that pressure of him having those expectations to be a shooter. It doesn't make any sense.
For sure.
So Steve, we'll kick in this video element here real quick. So I don't know if you saw this, but just to kind of diverge from the topic here, the Lids put out a map of like gear seals for the NBA. What team do you think has the most states that they're the leading team in sales? So like who do you think is like the leading sales across the country? Who has the most states that they're the leading NBA sales team? What do you think?
What NBA team
Yeah, what team do you think?
nationwide?
Yeah,
I'm I'm still gonna go Lakers. I think
Lakers. You think? All right, check out this map. So Lids put this out. The Bulls have about
that is shocking.
23 states. They own the entire Midwest, Texas. They own Florida, even Montana. All Bulls teams that, yeah, Idaho and Colorado are like, yeah, we don't, or Idaho and Wyoming don't have an opinion on that. Celtics got New England, but it's just shocked to kind of see the Bulls be that much of a presence. You just got to kind of maybe give it up to Jordan and the success he had and
Right. Yeah.
the statement he made as a player.
Right. I'm positive that people from North Dakota are still buying Bulls attire because of Michael Jordan, not because of you know Patrick Williams or something like that. Exciting to see that the Supersonics were still represented in
Yeah,
some way there.
exactly.
It's
Still
fantastic.
repping in the West. So let's kind
Yeah.
of kick it over to the Central now. So let's hit on the Bulls here. So Lonzo Ball still injured for them this year. Looks like they're gonna have Ao be the point guard, and Zach Levine finally got the max deal. What do you think of the Bulls this year?
That so I put down that's my dark horse to have like almost a tank season. I don't think that this is a team built for longevity more than anything else. The appeal to DeRozan, I get that you had to sign. You have to reward Zach Levine with a max contract. But the more I hear about Lonzo Ball's knees, it's just so terrifying because he's the motor for that team. He puts people in the positions that they need to be in to win. Do you have a non-defensive center? I don't know how long that they're going to wait for Patrick Williams to tap into his potential. Last season, they considered him untradeable.
Hmm.
It's probably because he's him and AO, the only younger talent that they have on the roster. But DeRozan's getting up there in age. It's unfair to expect the same type of production from him as he did last year. And Zach Levine didn't start the season. He's just getting back to form now. I would watch for this team to be on the verge of like almost an immediate tank. if they can't stay healthy. Um, I don't think that it's a roster put together. I think they're in the Knicks Hawks category as well. I don't think that they might be a regular season team, but once it comes down to a half court offense, besides DeRozan, I don't really trust them at all.
So, what are your thoughts, kind of now that you hit it on tanking? Because I know Adam Silver's addressed tanking this year, of course, with Victor Wembanyama, the projected #1 pick and generational talent that's going to be coming out next year. The expectations are for a bunch of teams to, tank in essence, and Adam Silver's trying to avoid that this year. How do you think? Do you see how many teams tanking for Wembanyama this year?
I think it's going to be a slow process. I mean, the Jazz are 4-1, and that's the
A
team that
huge surprise.
everyone thought that they would be sellouts and make it almost obvious. Um, the Thunder, I think that they're going to tank it, no fault of their own. They have a talented roster, but without Chet, their pick from this last year's draft, I
Hmm.
think that while they'll be fun and competitive to watch, I don't think that they'll be. So, like, I don't. To answer your question, there's going to be teams that are so awful that you think they're going to be tanking, but it's just that's the way they're presented. Um, I think the Hornets might be worse than the Jazz and like the Rockets and Thunder, just because two of their star players are out in trouble right now. Um, but even if, unless Adam Silver says like the cost of tanking will be your first round pick, I think that Wembenyama is that good of a
Yeah.
talent where it's almost worth it. It's almost a means to an end. Um, Raises questions though, based from tanking. Like, if you're SGA on the Thunder, are you really signing up for another year of being on a
Hmm.
terrible team in the prime of your career just for a new player to come in? That's what sucks. The Jazz, I get. They only have Colin Sexton, a few younger, nice players, but they have to dump Mike Conley. They have to dump Jordan Clarkson for more picks. And ultimately, like, I think Danny Ainge's prize would be Wembenyama.
Yeah. So now, sticking there in the Central Division, we had Cleveland, who loaded up with Donovan Mitchell. They gave the contract to Garland. Do you think they're kind of a new big three there with Mobley in the mix?
Yeah, I do. I think that this is a team. Credit to Cleveland for rebuilding so quickly after the LeBron and the Kyrie Irving fiasco. Um, I like where they're at. Um, it's awesome when you have like two generational defensive players protecting your basket. Mobley, I've never seen a rookie last season with footwork like Mobley since like Tim Duncan even, and Jared Allen, a complete ball stopper at the rim. Um, the concerning part for me is having such a small backcourt, but watching Garland, he's able to get to the basket. Donovan Mitchell needs to play some form of defense. I hope that it doesn't get to the point where the bigs have to work that hard protecting Garland and Donovan Mitchell, who are so undersized for their positions. But I think they're going to put up serious points. My only concern for them, I wrote down small forward position. I don't know if you can't start Karis LeVert. That's too much offense. Um, they have their rookie last year that they drafted. I think that he could step up, at least be a defensive stopper. But that's a team that I still think are like a few pieces away from being a contender. Maybe look to the buyout market essentially. Um, if somebody gets bought out, like an Eric Gordon, having a veteran like that on the team, maybe move Karis LeVert and a first to try to get something. But I like them a lot. I think they're going to be top four in the East. I think they'll have two All Stars on the team. Um, but it's all experience in their case. Like, if they just keep this young core together, it'll be interesting though, because I think in the NBA the rule is you could have two rookie max extensions on your roster. They traded for one in Donovan Mitchell. They passed one out to Garland, and Mobley is not someone I would mess around with
Yeah.
when his time comes. So that'll be interesting to see as well.
Yeah, kind of maybe just a problem for down the road for the Cavs. They'll live in the
Right.
moment for now and then kind of see how things play out. The other big team, of course, in this division is the Bucks. They're off to a 3-0 start. They're going to be adding Joe Ingles to the mix probably around like
Yep.
December, January. How far do you think the Bucks can run this year?
For me, they're still the best team in the East. I think that if they were healthy, they had a real opportunity to beat the Celtics last year in the playoffs. I think that they're an all-round good team. Retaining Bobby Portis was huge. You're right, adding Ingles, who could play 1 through 3, a clever passer, a clutch shooter. They still have Drew Holiday. These guys are like maturing together. Those are the teams that I like, that I watch out for. They got the championship already under their belt, so they know what it takes to win. They know that they want to get back there. But realistically, it'll go as far as Giannis takes them. He's still in the prime of his career, and he'll continue to go in the prime of his career. Um, but we saw last year how much of a difference not having Chris Middleton was for them,
Hmm.
just to space the floor.
Yeah.
He's not even a superstar; he's a good player, but just having someone that could space the floor, and maybe that's the assurance that Joe Ingles will bring eventually. But overall, I mean, expectations are championship or bust for them again.
Yeah, and then Giannis already, I think he's averaging like 36 and 13 a game, so he's coming
Yeah,
out hot. So they're definitely picking up where they left off last year. And then the last two teams in this division are Indiana and Detroit, who I think are just going to be fun teams to watch. They're young teams, zero expectations. I like Ben Matherin. I think he's up to another. He's been, I think he had 20 points in back-to-back games off the bench already.
yeah.
So I'm excited to see what he can do. And then, of course, you got Cade Cunningham in year two in Detroit and Jaden Ivey in the mix. So I just think those two teams are just going to be probably fun teams to watch this year.
Yeah, I think the Pistons, like for them, it must be like a nice sense of relief knowing that there's no expectations for even a playoff berth. The only things that you're looking for is for a step in Cunningham. For me, in the second half of the season last year, he was probably my rookie of the year, but Scotty Barnes and Mobley just had the longevity over the full season. Jaden Ivey, again, at low expectations, just come out, be an attacker, be a fun part of the team. For the Pacers, I I ease away from just being a fun team. I think that they need to figure this shit out. Um, they have, you know, like you said, Matherin probably the steal of the draft.
Yep.
They still have Buddy Heald. They have
Halliburton.
Tyrese running, yeah,
Yeah.
Halliburton running point guard, who to me was they stole him away from the Kings. I don't
Hmm.
know, still don't know how they ended up with him and not Fox. And then furthermore, you have Miles Turner, who on paper is everything that you want in a starting center in today's game. He can stretch the floor, he blocks shots, he's over 7 feet, he's got a nice touch, but they can't figure out if he's worth extending. I think it'll come down to like a DeAndre Ayton situation. But if they keep that young core together, I think that they're just as good, 3 years from now as the Magic are or as the Pistons are, probably even a little better. Um, I don't know what their plan is. I know that teams like the Lakers um, are looking at Buddy and
Hmm.
Miles. Every team could use shooting. He's still consistently a top 5 3-point field goal maker. Um, but they're in a weird, are we competitive? Are we planning for the future type of zone right now? That I'm anxious to see how it turns out.
Yeah, Miles Turner's always a name that's tossed around during the trade deadline. It's always like, is he going here? Is he going there? And then he ends up just staying in Indiana anyways. And then they got
Correct.
Sabonis in the mix too. So they got some good names. Like we've named a bunch of good players for this team. It's just seeing how they can mesh together and if they'll actually achieve. But they again have very low expectations. Just going to see what actually this pile of players turns into.
Right. Yeah. And they even have a win now coach that came over from the Mavericks. So he's not like a groom young talent. He's someone you bring in. Like when you won a championship with Dirk Nowitzki, he's a win now type of guy. So it's super confusing what their game plan is.
So now let's jump over to the final division here in the East. We got the Southeast. Atlanta and Washington right now sporting 3-1 records. I'm like, wow, Wizards 3 wins already. They're already probably 25% of the way to their projected win total this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess the big team here we'll hit on is Atlanta first. You know, they kind of have those expectations. They add DeJounte Murray to the mix. How do you see him kind of coexisting with Trey Young, and what do you think the expectations are for the Hawks this year?
Yeah. Well, on my notes for Southeast, I just put worst division in
Yeah.
basketball.
Hmm.
I think that's clear.
Yes, very much so.
I do think I think Murray's going to help. I think Murray's going to solve a lot of defensive woes that Trey was faced with, because even Bogdanovich, he's not a defensive stopper. So having Hunter and Murray on the wings now, I think that provides you pretty good wing defense. And having Clint Capella, still an athletic big, block shots at the basket, this might be a surprising team if they could all figure out how to play together. And that starts with Trey. He's got the ball for the most part throughout the most of the game in his hands. We'll see if he could be a distributor. I know he's averaged over 7 assists for most of his career, but they're usually like alley oops, like easy passes. I would love to see him get into that 10 or 11 assists per game range because he's absolutely got the talent. And we saw DeJounte Murray, like he's got this new aggression to him. I saw it in the summer league,
Hmm.
or not summer league, but over the summer playing in
The pro-ams.
pickup leagues. He just looks like he's ready to make a statement. Um, and they've got so much depth. I think they're bringing Bogdanovich off the bench now. They've got Collins still, who's another weird situation, but it looks like they're going to roll with them. Um, I think that this could be a real surprise for a lot of teams. I think that this is a type of team that would pass the Heat and that type of group moving forward.
Yeah, so and then the other surprise here, Miami, because you'd expect them to kind of be the cream of the crop, but they were very quiet this offseason, pretty much
Yep.
just lost PJ Tucker and gave Tyler Hero a huge deal. Other than that,
Yeah,
not much from the Heat. You think this is going to be a down year for Miami?
I do. I don't know how Miami having Pat Riley run the helm. I don't know how they could sit and watch the Knicks get better, the Hawks get better, the Celtics get better after a championship run. Every team in the East that was worth competing last year got better. You could say that the Wizards, just having Porzingis in the offseason and start up with them, the Wizards got better instead of like splitting a season between him and Dallas. Um, they paid Tyler Hero more than RJ Barrett got. Like you said, they lost PJ. Kyle Lowry is a year older. Jimmy Butler is still a non-shooter that's on a max contract. Like nothing bodes well for them to get better as we move into the season. I can see them slipping, still make the playoffs based off of a competitive nature and great coaching, but I no longer put them up there with the Bucks, Sixers, and Celtics.
And then other team I think interesting here in this division, they're 0-5, but they're the Orlando Magic. And Paolo already looking good out of the gates, seems to be the front runner here for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
What do you think of Paolo and the Magic so far?
just a fun team. Just a team that will have a top three pick next season, which will be great for them. Um, I, Imagining a duo of Paulo and Wembenyama playing together would absolutely blow my mind. But they're just a fun team. I think they need to figure out the direction they're going point guard wise. Suggs, maybe he's not the guy that we thought he'd be coming out of Gonzaga. Cole Anthony seems like more of a scorer than a true point guard. And if Fultz is even part of the equation anymore, you've got solid bigs. They retained Mobamba, which I found interesting to only play him. I saw an average of 5 minutes a game so far. Um, but there's no pressure on him. There's no pressure for him to succeed or for the Magic to compete for a playoff spot, just to show the talent that they have.
Yeah, sorry, Steve had a little camera issue there. For the fans watching
No
at home,
worries.
they'll get to watch that on live there. So yeah, I pretty much think that's gonna wrap it up for the East here. The only other note I had is you're not liking Charlotte this year, but they're a team who over the last 3 years has had 10 win improvements each season, and I thought is this the year they're finally more than a play-in team?
I mean, taking away Miles, it doesn't look like he's going to play this year. Um, Book Knight got himself a DUI and a gun possession.
Hmm.
I I think that also like if you watch coming from the same draft, if you watch Anthony Edwards and you watch LaMelo Ball, there was discussions on who should have gone before who. You see how the ownership and the team put together something for Anthony Edwards to compete with, and how the Hornets have completely combusted. Um, LaMelo Ball's not someone that you could count on getting over 25 a game like Ant is. He's someone that I think plays well when he plays with good players. And if Gordon Hayward is like your and PJ Washington, if those are your guys that you're rolling into this year, I think that they're in a lot of trouble. I think that they're going to take a serious step back, um, and maybe just plan for the future. Maybe that's another team that we could think of tanking. I'm not positive. I just don't see them as even being competitive this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, they've had such a tumultuous offseason that I think they kind of maybe have plateaued last year and are going to kind of maybe take a little swing down here. Um, but we'll kind of see. So we're going to take a super quick break for you folks and then jump into the West here.
Yeah. Okay.
Recording stop. Recording in progress.
This is perfect. Yeah, they are so in the West. I think it's still the Nuggets, Suns, and Warriors. Right below them, it's the Mavs section of just having a generational talent and seeing where it could take you. I mean, obviously that's a dangerous game to play. Just riding as far as Luca goes. Uh, but I think this is a team that'll get moving. This is a team that could win 10 straight games and get hot immediately. You know, Luca could average over 30 a game. I did like the additions of Christian Wood. I'm excited to see what he could do. But otherwise, they're really asking Luca to make a lot out of nothing, and it could be a lot of pressure in a very competitive West, and even in the division. I mean, they're with the Grizzlies, who are probably the best in the division. So you've got them to deal with. You've got a Pelicans team that looks very competitive to start this season, a Rockets group that are pesky, and a Spurs group that have outperformed any expectations so far. I think I Right, yeah, that's another team everyone thought would tank, but Popovich, it's just his coaching is unreal. But I feel like the Mavericks need to get some help. They need to get Luca a counterpart. They thought it was Porzingis. They had Brunson. They let him walk. Now it's Dinwiddie and Christian Wood. I'm starting to get nervous. I thought they would be a team that would want an Evan Fournier type from the Knicks to help space the floor and let Luka operate. So we'll see about that. But I don't even see much that the Knicks would want from them right now.
Yeah, so I think the other two teams I want to highlight here for this is, last team's darling and surprise was the Memphis Grizzlies. You think they can repeat their success this year, especially having Jaren Jackson out? It looks like I think until December, no, the end of November, mid December. It looks like he'll be out till.
Yeah, would be my early bet for MVP this season, to dethrone Jokic or Giannis. I think that he just continues to get better. When I was very critical of him when he was younger, I said I saw a lot of Westbrook, a lot of young Derrick Rose, just more athletic and playing to that. But at the start of the season, like you could tell the shot has become more fluid, and that team just plays with such cohesion. I think that they will still own that division. Not yet a championship. They have a lot of the same thing, really. Steven Adams, like not a today's game center, but like a great teammate to have. Um, but better than the Mavericks for sure. I think that they're just too lively. Memphis Arena is so loud. They run. They have a half court offense with Desmond Bane's gotten a lot better. It seems already. I still think it's their division to lose.
Yeah, so following up on that, I think my team that's the surprise this year, and you hit on a little bit, as I think the Pelicans are going to be, a surprise here in the West. Oh, great. So they got Zion coming back. I think
Yep.
he's already injured though, which is not a great
Him and
start.
Ingram, yeah.
But yeah, Ingram's injured, but you got C.J. McCollum in the mix. Alvarado, had a nice year as a rookie. I think they're going to be that surprise here in the mix here in the Southwest.
Yeah, I like that team a lot. Again, it's just health. I think that, they made the playoffs last year without Zion. So just getting him back, I think they need to ease him back, even though everyone's so eager to watch him play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a team that has the ability to go small. They could go big. They could have Zion run point. There's so much interchangeability on this roster, that if everyone stays healthy, and it's such a big if, as we've seen with Zion, but he looks in better shape. I've never really seen Ingram injured, so I'm surprised
Mm-hmm.
already that that's happened. But with Valanciunas in the paint, I think that this team has so much potential to compete this year. But it will be so sad if the health is such an issue.
Yeah, hopefully it's like early season little stuff, so they can kind of get in a groove, build that team chemistry and all that. Just having these guys come back from injuries, because I think they could definitely be a fun team, a surprise out of the West there in New Orleans. So now let's move over to the Northwest, who I think is probably going to be the most competitive division in basketball this year. You got the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Blazers. I mean, okay, let me take that back. So let me walk that back. Those three. Those three. You got Portland in the mix. Utah, though, again, 4-1 to start, so who knows? They could be a surprise. Right now, it's looking like a really good division, but again, I think the most interesting story is going to be the Nuggets having Jamal Murray come back and Michael Porter Jr. How do you think the Nuggets can respond having those two guys back in the mix?
So to start the season, the Nuggets were my pick to win the West, but MPJ is already out with lumbar issues. They said he's not playing moving forward now. They're going to watch the back. And that was his issue in the NBA draft. That's why he fell to the Nuggets in the first place. Um, Still can't get over that they dished out a max contract to him, but that's their doing.
Mm-hmm.
I love Jamal Murray. He was one of my favorite players in the bubble. He was a monster before he got hurt. I think that him being able to stretch the floor will pay dividends. And then adding little pieces like KCP to the mix, a competitive defender and another one that could stretch the floor for Jokic to operate and for Aaron Gordon to cut to the basket. If everything goes well, not even perfect, but well, I think that this could be almost head and shoulders the best team in the West. Um, I think until you beat the Warriors, they're still the champions. They're still the favorites. But I think if anyone were to do it, it's the Nuggets, just because of their starting five. It's just so hard to deal with.
Now, what about the T Wolves? So they're sitting at 3-2 this year. Had that nice run last year. Had the big win in the play-in game. Then
Yeah.
had the the balls, I'd say, to bring in Rudy Gobert in the
Yep.
offseason now to mesh with Cat and Ant. So, how do you think things are going to play out here with the T Wolves this year? I know we've talked about them in the
Yeah.
past, and we're worried about them, struggling, especially late in games, having Gobert on the floor.
I think it's going to be fine. I think it didn't work on the Jazz, and I think that's why some people have a bad taste in their mouth about adding Gobert. But realistically, all this does is allow Cat to be a stretch four. He's not a center. He was never a center. This means that he no longer has to have the shit kicked out of him by Embiid when they play each other. Somebody else could try to handle him. Cat was the 3-point contest champion last year. Like, he does not want to be in the paint. He wants to be stretching the floor. And I think that's fine in the sense where Anthony Edwards' best aspect of his game is his athleticism. So driving to the basket might be more open. But I think that the ceiling for the Timberwolves this season is just a great regular season team. I don't think that they're playoff ready. I think that there's still too much responsibility on D'Angelo and Ant backcourt. But that being said, I could see them winning over 45 games, no problem. Um, I think defense will be fine. I think rebounding will be great. They have like an athletic team and a large team. But this is just a question of experience. And again, just like Rudy on the Jazz, like once D'Angelo and Ant start letting people pass them, is he going to have like another big issue with having to clean up their blow bys, just like he did in Utah?
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately grew a strain on Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley.
Yeah, yeah. I know that's kind of the big thing we're looking for this year is just kind of see how they can handle themselves defensively, adding a piece like Gobert, but will he lose it having no support up front of him? And then the
Right.
other team here, Portland. So, Dame finally got paid. They're 4-1 here out of the gates. Added a couple of guys. I know Gary Payton Jr. got put in the mix there. What do you think the Blazers are going to do this year?
Yeah, and Gary Payton hasn't even played yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've been someone that was super critical and has been super critical of Damian Lillard. I hate the way that he handled his contract negotiation, but that doesn't mean that he's not an exceptional basketball player. From what I hear, he was able to come back last season, and the team asked him not to. They just wanted to preserve him for this season. And while he's out, I believe with a calf strain as well already, I think that's just more to do with not having played in so long
Yeah.
versus like an actual bad leg. He scored 40 points twice already in 5 games, which is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And even more telling, when the Blazers beat the Nuggets, watching Damian Lillard feed the ball to an Anthony Simons who had the hot hand, basically give up the ball possession after possession in the second half because Simons was just drilling from three. I think that shows a different maturity behind Damian Lillard, that he doesn't have to always be the guy. As we saw last year, Anthony Simons is super capable of putting
Yeah.
the ball in the hoop. He earned himself $100 million extension. It's just like a longer, quicker CJ McCollum that you replaced him with. I think this is another question, and it sounds so repetitive. This is our first recorded podcast. All we fucking talk about is health. That's all it is for teams like this. There's in betweeners.
Yep.
Can Nurkic stay healthy? If Damian Lillard gets hurt, this team may not even make the playoffs in the West. So
Yeah.
that's all it is.
And then, of
But
course,
at
Shaden
least
Sharp, who's the mysterious injury man. Who knows what's going to happen with him?
yeah, like maybe the most potential of any rookie in the league right now, but we just haven't gotten a chance to witness it. You brought in Jeremy Grant, a nice floor spacer, an athletic wing that could guard multiple positions. So I think if Damian goes out for 3-4 games every now and then, they could stay afloat. But if he has a season-ending injury, this team is in tough shape.
Yeah, it's gonna ride or die. But I think maybe him being on the bench a little bit last year, just kind of seeing the guys around him, maybe has given him that comfort. Like, okay, maybe these guys can play. Maybe I can rely on Simons a little bit more. So again,
Exactly.
injuries again, we'll see how that kind of pops up for them. And then lastly, what are your expectations for Utah? You think they're in tank mode? I mean, I got Utah and the Thunder here. I think I'm not sure how pro-am play is going to affect. So, having Chet go out with a year, I don't know if it's going to, limit how much we see guys in pro-ams next year.
Yeah, if I was a team now, I would heavily push against it.
Yeah.
It's one thing to play representing your country in the Olympics or overseas, but just playing pro-am ball, I mean, he got hurt just trying to guard LeBron.
Hmm. Yeah.
Doesn't bode well.
Not a good look for
Uh,
Chet either.
and there's too much, yeah, there's too much responsibility. The Thunder invested too much in the pick for you to get hurt before the season. I I understand it's what players want to do. It's a player-driven league, so they're going to do what they want to do. But it's just such a poor look. And then the little part of me in the brain is going, the Thunder don't fucking care if he's not playing because they want Wembanyama anyway.
Yeah.
Having a front court of Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, that's that's league changing, like just defensively.
Hmm.
So are they that pissed about it? I can't really tell for sure. Like I said earlier, if I was SGA, I would start to get a little peeved about the situation, being on a losing team for like the fifth straight season.
Yeah.
But it just gives younger guys a chance to get better.
Yeah, and I think he's only 2 years into his max deal too. So, but I feel like pro am play hit such a pinnacle this year. I feel like you saw it every day, guys at different courts and this and that. And when you guys have guys making hundreds of millions of dollars on their contract, and you have them playing against guys who work at the grocery store or like
Right.
cops and firefighters, like there's just like so much room for error there. Like I don't know why it
Yep.
got to that point. Like I'm so surprised. Uh,
Yep.
but now let's kind of kick it over to the Pacific, wind down the West here. Of course, this is your cream of the crop. You got Golden State, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Suns, and then of course the Kings rounding things out. So let's start, of course, with the defending champ Warriors. Tumultuous offseason, or I guess training camp for the Warriors there with your Poole and Draymond issues. Poole gets a big contract. How do you think the team chemistry is going to work out for the Warriors this year? You think there's going to be issues and start to kind of have cracks in this dynasty?
No, I do not. Nope. I think that the Warriors have just Warrior basketball is just a system. It's like a lifestyle
It's like
almost.
Patriots football, right, Steve?
Uh, well, whatever. Get whatever you think works for yourself. I was gonna say it was like the Spurs. Like no on the Warriors, no one's bigger than the next person. I like to think that Steph Curry treats the last person on the bench as you would Klay Thompson or Draymond. Obviously, it makes things easier when you have championships. Like there's really not that much pressure to prove yourself. Jordan Poole, I thought deserved the contract extension. Um, it'll be interesting to see. I think maybe we're going to start to see a decline for Klay Thompson's production and see if we get a little more Moody or Kuminga. I'm still a Wiseman believer. I think that he's like a hidden gem
Hmm.
that really the Warriors haven't had
I mean, he's
since
still
like Andrew
21, I
Bogut.
think. Yeah, he's still
Yeah, he's
super
still
young.
21. Their last like great rim protector, I think, was Bogut. They've gotten by with Kevin Looney, which is crazy, but
Mm.
um, it starts and ends with Steph, in my opinion. He looks like he hasn't lost a beat. I get Draymond; he's got his antics, and he's probably the locker room leader. He's another one though. This offseason, they're going to have to make a serious decision on
Yeah.
whether they're going to extend him, let him go to another team, or if he's just going to be a TNT guy from here on out. I thought his opening monologue or whatever it was to start the season was super weird when it was him just talking into a camera. Um, I like it was almost they made the situation bigger than it had to be.
Yeah.
Nobody was really looking for anything, but they're the best until they're dethroned. So I don't think anyone's expecting anything less than a championship from them.
Yeah. So and then for my notes, so of course the team that's been challenging them lately has been the Suns. And my note for the Suns is this the year that Chris Paul finally kills the Suns.
I look. They beat the Warriors. Clay got kicked out of the arena.
Yeah,
I
first time
just
ever.
don't.
But again, is that
Yeah,
was that was I feel like the Warriors got a little bit of edge to them this year for some reason.
yeah. I mean, they're super deep and they're proven. I don't really. They don't have anything to prove against lesser competition, and in their eyes, that's what the Suns are. they're looking at the Suns like this is the best you put this together and this is the best you could do. I don't think that this is a championship team for the Suns. I don't know if Ayton still wants to be there even. Um, I think they lack depth. Jay Crowder's not even playing. You're going to have to make a decision this offseason on Cam Johnson. Like these are some tough calls. And Chris Paul, it's just how long can you keep beating Father Time?
Yeah.
It has to come to an end at some point. Um, and they're in just such a tough division too. Like it's impossible to say like, yes, this is the Suns' year when the Warriors are that good and that deep.
Hmm. But then also now the next thing we want to hit on is the Clippers. So are they going to finally reach the potential that everyone talks about them being so good and having the guys in the mix? Kawhi seems like he'll be healthy now. Paul George, is this finally the year the Clippers reach that precipice of putting it all together?
So for me, the Clippers are the Nets of the West. They just I don't know why you think that you could just plop talent together and be like, look at us now. They haven't done anything. They've proven nothing. They added John Wall, and he had some comments like, "Oh, how are you going to guard me and Kawhi and Paul George?" But they haven't even been on the floor yet together. Um, Kawhi is already out with knee rest. Paul George, I've always thought was a great two-way player, but in the division in the West, it's just too tough to have him. Reggie off to a slow start. Norman Powell off to a slow start. Zubac doesn't look like he knows what his role is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really worried about Kawhi Leonard. I don't know. He hasn't been Kawhi Leonard since like 2017, where he carried such a workload on
Yeah.
himself. Um, but this is like in this division, if you get behind a few games, you're going to sink.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talked about the Northwest Division, how good the top three of those teams will be. We talked in the Pacific, the Warriors and the Suns. So if the Clippers fall, like that might be a tough pit to climb out of.
Yeah. So now, before we get to the team that everyone wants to talk about, how do you think the Kings are going to fare this year? They got Keegan Murray. You think he's going to be in the mix for Rookie of the Year?
It's just there. So we talked about the Magic and we talked about the Pistons. To me, those are fun teams to watch, um, and they emphasize the young talent. For the Kings, they're just not fun to watch. They have Fox and Sabonis, who are now veterans. So Keegan Murray, he might get lost in the shuffle. Where preseason, I thought he was in the best scenario to succeed. His only job is to score, and that's what he's best at. But the Kings are just such a drag to watch. It's like it really brings me down. I think he still has a chance to make an all rookie team, probably all rookie first team. But after watching Matherin and Paolo get off the hot starts, like
Mm-hmm.
he might be pretty far back in rookie of the year conversation.
Yeah, I know we had Nick Johnson from No Ceilings on, and he's a big Keegan Murray guy. So kind of see how things play out. Maybe we'll get Nick back on and kind of hear his thoughts on the Kings. It's got to be tough to be a Kings fan. You know, I feel like you don't find them very often, but they're passionate about their team. They're living back in the days when it was like C. Webb and Mike Bibby and
Right? Yeah, it's
Doug
just
Christie, I think, was on that team.
yeah. I mean, I was the biggest Stojakovic fan in the
Yeah,
world,
Peja. Yep.
but it's just crazy that
Vlade
like
Divac.
Seattle lost their team and Sacramento hasn't, and like they haven't done anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
just year after year the same nonsense that they put out.
Yeah, those poor Kings there in Sacramento. But lastly, speaking of Kings, the Lakers, King James and crew, off to a blistering 0-4 start. How long till this just whole thing blows up this year?
Yeah, I don't know why it's a surprise to anybody. I don't know what the surprise is. They got rid of all of their young shooting, and last year they brought in Westbrook, and it didn't work. So this year they brought in younger players, more athletic players, but they still can't shoot. Like Lonnie Walker is a solid player, but he can't shoot. He's never been a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand the expectations, and I'm really, really tired of LeBron's piss shit attitude of rolling his eyes. Like you did this, you put this together. Any Lakers move for a free agent or a trade, I'm I would bet my life that it goes through LeBron. You look at the amount of clutch players on the team. That's his best friend and his sports agent doing this. Rob Pelinka, former agent, I'm sure goes along with it. And today he sent out a quote saying, how much longer could someone be taken for granted? Like, you did this though. There were rumors about pre-Westbrook about a trade for Buddy Hield and some
Yeah, I was
Kings
gonna bring that
players,
up. Yeah.
and that's the exact type of player that they need. They don't need superstars. They need a Buddy Hield. They need an Evan Fournier. And you went with Westbrook, and you put out Instagram posts saying, "Why not? Like, let's do it. This and that." And you're just not the guy. It's crazy to think. You look at LeBron's championship teams. Kevin Love, stretch, like Kyrie Irving, shooter. He's always been surrounded by shooters, and yet he orchestrated this Lakers move, and then he signed an extension, and now he's getting pissed about being taken for granted. It's like, dude, you can't have everything. It can't be the same.
Yeah, no, this is the story that came out a few days ago, Steve. So earlier this week, The Athletic reported that the Jazz offered the Lakers uh, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mike Conley, Rudy Gay, and the first round pick in 2023 for Westbrook and a 2027 and 2029 first rounder. So they could have cut ties
But
with him last year and gotten that haul from the Jazz.
those are their last first round picks. That's crazy to say that you're banking on LeBron and company being so good that you're not even worried about replacing them in the next 10 years even. I
Mm.
just don't understand what the mentality is. But even more so, apart from the Jazz, what team would want Russell Westbrook? Like, he doesn't fit on any team, because if you send him to Detroit, Orlando, something like that, then he's hindering young players getting better. There's not a team that works for Westbrook, and it's sad because I think that this is going to overshadow his greatness from when
Hmm.
he was on the Thunder. And we can't forget he's multiple time MVP and a triple double season. But those are like self stats. That's not team stuff that he's doing. Um, but the Lakers might be. I mean, are they the worst team in their division to start the season? Possibly.
Yeah.
The
Well, I was
the
gonna
Kings are
say, do
what,
you
1-4?
think as this plays out, do you think there's any conspiracy to the Lakers tanking, like doing some shadow tanking, trying to get Wembanyama and then set themselves up for another 10 years, 10, 20
But
years?
they don't have a first round pick.
Oh, okay.
They don't even
I
have
didn't even think of
they
that.
don't own their own pick. That's I think the Wizards have this pick. That's what's crazy.
Oh, wow.
And if the Wizards have this pick and the Lakers are this bad, like, they'll end up with a very good player.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I maybe LeBron is the one that has to go. Maybe we'll see him traded for the first time in his career, which will be crazy. And really, this shit season overshadows the fact that he's on pace to pass Kareem in points
Yeah.
scored, which is sad.
Yeah, because that's like a big, huge story. But again, everyone's just talking about how much this is just a dumpster fire and Russell Westbrook and,
I
whatever. We'll
bet
see.
Kareem loves it.
Yeah. Poor Kareem.
I bet he
He's
loves
he's
it.
had some rough days after his playing career. He's
Yeah.
tight. He's tight in the pocket these days. So let's kind of look overall, Steve. Here, who do you think coming out of the West? Who's coming out of the East? And who are you going to see in the finals?
I would love to see a Nuggets Bucks finals. I think that would be the most fun. I think the matchups, I think watching Giannis and Jokic guard each other or go at each other, both 6'10", 6'11" power forwards, just different in their own right, but exceptional in different ways. Drew Holiday and Jamal Murray, I think, would be
Hmm.
so much fun. Bobby Portis, Aaron Gordon, for sure going to fight. Um, I think that would be the most fun finals we could ask for. Um, it's tough to bet against the Warriors, um, but if the Nuggets stay healthy, I think that this is finally the year that they could do it.
Yeah, I like the Nuggets, and then of course I'm going with the Celtics as always. Can't go
Yeah,
against my
boy,
boys in green.
I should have said the Knicks. Yeah,
Well, I mean, Brunson had a huge game the other night, and they gave him a card in 2K, so things are looking good for
he's
the Knicks so
he's
far.
great. He's great.
Um, who you liking for MVP?
MVP is a weird one. I think that Jokic might get another, just because the way I look at it, if you take the most influential player on a team off that team, like how does the team fare?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that Jokic is so good. If the Nuggets didn't have him, I think that they would be a pretty brutal team. Um, I don't see, and also in today's league, it's not even best player, it's longevity. Jokic plays in such a style where he's not going to get hurt. He's not putting, you know, damage on his knees jumping. He plays like a Luka Doncic, but at 6'10", 6'11". Um, I could see Luka down the road winning one. But I think that again, and what this would be his third MVP, which is
Mm-hmm.
after if he wins a third one, especially if he makes a final appearance and loses, then he starts to creep up on possibly the greatest foreign player of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good pick there. I think I like Embiid too, but I just don't think the Sixers are going to be good enough this year. Like for him to be up
I don't
there.
even know if we really touched on the Sixers for this, but I said it before when with Philadelphia having Joel, it really reminds me of when Orlando had Shaq, and they just had no idea what to do with him. They had no idea what they had or what like how to play him, who to put around him. They tried Penny and Scott and shooters, and nothing worked. And he had to leave and kind of be put in his place. Like maybe he's more of a Robin than a Batman with
Mm-hmm.
Kobe and Shaq, in order to tap into his potential greatness.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on in Philadelphia. Is I think that Daryl Morey just he's trying, but he has no idea what like how to utilize them, um, which is really tough to see. To let probably the best center in the league, best pure center in the league, slip through your fingers like that, and then
Yeah.
maybe eventually end up on another team.
Yeah, that'd be brutal. One thing I want to throw your mind. So I was like, we've talked about our podcasting stuff before, and one topic I wanted to throw at you for another idea we were tossing around is I've kind of been banning this about in my head is I don't know whether Shaq would be dominant in today's NBA or not. I mean,
Easy,
he's huge. Well, but like, look
easy.
at the speed of today's game and the way that the players play. Like, I feel like Shaq is a guy who he might tire it out, might foul out quick, just with the flopping and things going on these days. I'm just saying, I think Shaq was perfect for the time that he played, but I think if he played in today's age, I don't think he would have that historical
Yeah,
impact
I
that he had.
mean, he couldn't even really stretch at all, even with a floater.
Yeah.
I get that in that aspect, but the way I think about it is like you look at the centers in today's league, who like even Robert Williams, Mitchell Robinson, Wendell Carter, um, Brooke Lopez, like
Hmm.
who on earth is going to guard him
Yeah.
in the post? And he would just shove, push people out of the way. But it's also a different era where you
Yeah.
could be more physical. In today's
Exactly.
league, you need to be a little soft. Like that's just the era that we're in. That's just where we're trending right now.
Yeah.
So maybe you're.
Yeah, because we talked about
I,
kind of how I feel like the league's trending towards there's not so many centers. It's like, stretch fours. You want to have that speed, that shooting versus having that defensive presence. So that got me
yep.
thinking down that road. Like, would Shaq play in today's NBA? Like, of course he'd play, but by play I mean, would he have been Shaq?
Right. Yeah. It's tough because the league went from centers to wings to point guards, and now we're in this weird positionless era
Just athleticism,
of
the athleticism
yeah,
era.
if you can't play more than one position, then you're really not, you don't belong in this league. Like, well, you see how Brooke Lopez had to change his whole game to expand his career by a few years. On the Nets, I think they said during his Nets era, he had less than 23s made, and he's their all time leading scorer. And now on the Bucks, he's always outside of the line.
Yeah, yeah. He's been a big player for them now too. So, and then lastly, we didn't hit on who's your choice for rookie of the year. Who you gonna pick? I'm
Right
going,
now,
of course,
it's
with my
right
boy
now.
Ben Matherin.
For me, right now, it's Paulo. He's just uh, the advantage that Paulo has that Matherin doesn't is Paulo knows he's the guy on the Magic. There's no question. Like, is there someone else that should be getting more touches? With with Matherin, he's going to be a dog in this league for a long, long time. But there's just so much confusion on that team on like who even they're planning to be the star. You've got a great point guard. You've got an interesting center. Um, but I'm anxious to see. I think that if they could dump Buddy and bring in some more pieces or some picks, like the Pacers are going to get good quick.
Yeah. Lastly, last question. What's your prediction for the Knicks record so I can put it down and we can talk about it in a few months?
I said they're making the playoffs. If they're playing like they are now, 44 wins, 45 wins.
44, 45 wins. Okay, pencil that in there. All right. Cool. All right, Steve. Well, thank you again for joining us on the podcast. Our lead NBA insider, Steve Celadon. You can follow him on Twitter at _the_average_fan. So I'm sure Steve's going to be firing that back up. I know it was a slow Twitter summer for you with baseball and football, but look at your Giants. I've been making some money on the Giants this year.
Yeah.
I picked them as a surprise in my week 1 podcast. I'm like, I think the NFC East is going to be a surprise, and like Brian Dable comes from the Patriots, organization. So you're welcome.
Yeah, no, you're right. I've made money on them too. I don't know why they were the underdogs against Jacksonville last Sunday, but it was great. Saquon's back. Daniel Jones wants a contract. It's playing out. And then my Mets, ultimately a disappointment, kept me distracted, but now it's all NBA all the time.
All NBA, and you can get all of Steve's takes and all that at _the_average_fan on Twitter. And of course, Steve will be back on the podcast here in the near future to wrap some more NBA. So thanks again for everybody for checking out this episode, tuning into the video here, our first one on YouTube. If you are just listening to the audio, go check out the video on our YouTube channel, and there'll be more to come. But other than that, folks, have a great night. Oh, no, I didn't get the outro good. God damn it. Hold on. Here we go. Later.
Sports.